I know I took my time to review Ember and her prime, but at least now you get a short little rhyme. So let's take a look at Ember, Mistress of the Flame. She's one of the few Warframes with which you don't have to aim, and when the situation is dire, she will set the world on fire. She's the hottest frame in the game. So first up, to get Ember, you have to fight General Sargus Rook in the mission Tethys on Saturn. Ember Prime has been vaulted and is currently unavailable in the game, and even though you can trade for her with other players, the price doesn't go below 1000 platinum nowadays. For an offensive caster, the original Ember is actually pretty beefy. She has 100 health and shields, which both go up to 300 at rank 30. She has 100 armor, which is very high for a caster. 150 power, which goes up to 225 at rank 30, and sprint speed of 1.1, so she's faster than most other Warframes. And to top it off, she has 3 polarities, 2 dashes, and a V in the aura slot. Ember Prime is even beefier than that, however. She has 125 shields, which go up to 375 at rank 30, and she has 125 armor. Now, while she still has 3 polarities, she has a V and a D compared to the 2 dashes on the regular one, and she still has a V in the aura slot. Now, before we take a closer look at her abilities, I just want to say that all the augments for her abilities can be obtained by either reaching the rank of General under the Steel Meridian, or the rank of Exalted under the Red Veil and spending 25,000 standing. Now, to avoid some redundancy later, I want to talk about heat damage and heat procs. So fire damage or heat damage does more damage to cloned flesh, which is basically all the Grenier except for rollers, and it does more damage to the infested and infested flesh. However, it does 50% less damage versus proto shields, which are the shield possessed by the beefier corpus units like corpus techs, warden, sniper crewmen, nullifier crewmen, even the corrupted nullifier, and all of the corpus bosses plus stalker and shadow stalker. So overall, Ember is awesome versus the infested, okay versus the Grenier, and not so good against high-level corpus. The unique status effect of heat damage is Ignite, which will cause the afflicted target to receive 50% of the source's base damage per tick, which will tick 7 times over the duration of 6 seconds. That's not everything, however. Ignite also has a little bit of crowd control in it because, well, as you may expect, if you set something on fire, it will freak out and flail around for a couple of seconds and not doing anything. And now that we know all about fire and heat damage, let's talk about the abilities, and let's start off with Ember's passive, which is called Ignition. So if Ember is set on fire and receives a heat proc herself, she will gain 35% bonus power strength for the duration, and she will regenerate 10 points of energy for every second that she is on fire. This is not the most practical passive ability in the game, but there's still plenty of enemies that will set you on fire, like napalms and the corrupted Moas, so every now and then you will get a nice boost to power strength and you will get a little bit of energy as well. So Ember's first ability is called Fireball, where Ember hurls a fireball at a target location that will deal 400 damage on impact and will have 100% status chance. The projectile will also do a small 5-meter AoE that has 50% status chance and does 150 heat damage. All damage dealt by this ability is affected by power strength, but the radius in which you do the small AoE with 50% status chance is not affected by power range. It is locked at 5 meters. This ability does not require a target, so you can cast it on the ground and hit enemies with the splash damage, and it does have travel time, so it will not explode until it hits a solid object. It's also a one-handed ability, so you can use it while performing many actions, including reloading, which is really nice. The augment for Fireball is called Fireball Frenzy, which will allow you to cast Fireball on allies, which will add 100% bonus fire damage to their attacks for 40 seconds. The extra damage this provides is affected by power strength and can be modded all the way up to 349 bonus damage, which is quite a lot, and the duration of this buff is affected by power duration. Now, this buff is pretty awesome because it can combine with other elemental damage types to create elemental combos. So if you cast Fireball Frenzy on an ally that is affected by Shock Trooper, which adds electric damage, he will do radiation damage. Ember's second ability is called Accelerant, where Ember releases a wave of Accelerant that will stun all enemies within 20 meters, increase her casting speed by 50%, and all the stunned enemies will take 250% increased heat damage for 30 seconds. Now, the duration of the buff for Ember and the debuff for the enemies is affected by power duration, and the duration of the stun, which only lasts for about 3 to 5 seconds, is not. The scariest part about this ability is how power strength increases the heat damage taken by the enemies. Because if you max out your power strength, the enemies will take 747.5% increased heat damage. And that is a lot of heat damage. And as is to be expected, the range of this ability is affected by power range. The augment for Accelerant is called Flash Accelerant, which will give your allies 50% bonus casting speed and 50% bonus fire damage if they are within range when you cast Accelerant. This does not affect Ember at all. The bonus heat damage is affected by power strength, but the casting speed bonus is not. Ember's third ability is called Fire Blast, where Ember smashes the ground, creating a wave of fire that will expand outwards to a radius of 15 meters, and enemies hit by this shockwave will suffer 200 heat damage with 100% status chance, and they will be knocked back. At the same time, a 4-meter ring of fire that's 1 meter thick will be left at the point of impact that will last for 20 seconds, and enemies that walk through the fire will suffer 225 heat damage every second. Now, the important thing here is that it's just a ring of fire that's 1 meter thick, so if enemies run through the fire and they're in the center, they will not take any damage. The damage of the initial shockwave as well as the ring of fire are both affected by power strength, but the range of both the shockwave and the ring of fire are not affected by power range, so the shockwave is stuck at 15 meters and the ring of fire will always be only 4 meters wide. However, you can at least increase the duration of the Ring of Fire by adding power duration mods. Now, the awesome thing about this ability is that you can use it at basically any time. You can use it while jumping, while sliding, and stuff like that. So that's pretty awesome, and you can cast multiple Rings of Fire at the same time. So you can just keep bashing the ground, sending out shockwaves, and increasing the damage the small ring does. Or, you can just run around and put down a bunch of rings of fire, so as the enemies are running towards you, they're all burning to death. The augment for Fire Blast is called Fire Fright, which causes the ring of fire to essentially stun enemies for 5 seconds once they walk into it. This augment is not affected by any mods, and it's kind of cool because it will stun the enemies in the ring of fire, and the enemies will take quite a bit of damage in the 5 seconds where they're flailing around and they're standing in fire. However, it's only really good if you're defending an objective against the infested. Against the other factions, it's not that great because they don't charge you as much as the infested do. And Ember's fourth and final ability is called World on Fire, where Ember, sets the world on fire. So when you first cast this ability, Ember will slam her fist on the ground and she will deal 400 heat damage to a maximum of 5 enemies within a radius of 15 meters. After this though, in a radius of 15 meters, which is affected by power range, random explosions will start happening at the rate of roughly 2 to 5 explosions every second. Each explosion deals 400 heat damage and has 35% chance to set the enemy on fire. And the initial damage as well as the explosion damage are both affected by power strength, and it also affects the chance to set the enemy on fire. Now, World on Fire is a toggle ability and it will drain 3 energy every second while it's active. And the energy drain is affected by both power efficiency and power duration, where power efficiency has a much more noticeable effect, but power duration is still noticeable, especially if you go into negative power duration. And while World on Fire is active, you cannot gain energy from Trinity's Energy Vampire, Limbo's Banish or Cataclysm, Team Energy Restores, Energy Siphon, and the Zenuric passive ability. The only way to get energy is by picking up energy orbs or touching a death orb if you're running with Ember Prime. The augment for World on Fire is called Firequake, where enemies hit by the explosions will be knocked down and opened up to ground finishers. This is an extremely powerful augment because A, ground finishers do a hell of a lot of damage, and B, you'll be knocking everything around you down as long as you have World on Fire active. And that is scary good, especially in high-level missions where World on Fire may not do as much damage as it does in low to mid-level missions where you can basically just run through the tile set and everything will die. And it turns an ability that's already amazing in low to mid-level missions into an ability that's amazing in high-level missions as well. Because with this augment, Ember doesn't give a damn. You put on this augment, you turn on World on Fire, and you can sprint through the final sortie, no problem. Because all the enemies are laying on the ground, they are knocked down, and as soon as they get back up, they get hit by another explosion, which will once again knock them down. And as far as I know, there are no diminishing returns in Warframe, so you can just stand there and knock everyone down as long as you have energy. So would I recommend Ember? Of course I would. Ember is such a good Warframe. I love Ember so very much. I use her all the bloody time because she is so very good at so many different things. You need to defend an objective? Okay, slap down Fire Blast. You need to run through a low-level exterminate mission? Okay, let's turn on World on Fire. Do I need to do a sortie that has really tough enemies and I need to knock them down? Boom, I'm gonna put on Firequake. Just so many different things you can do. And she can even support her allies if you want to farm something like Berehinia. You have Fireball Frenzy that will add a ton of fire damage to your allies, or you can use Flash Accelerant, which will add a little bit of fire damage but will increase your allies' casting speed by a lot. And then there is my personal favorite, which is farming low to mid-level missions. Ember is so good for that. You just turn on World on Fire, you run through the tile set, all the enemies will die, and if you have something like the Ignis, you can just spray it around, break all the containers, and you will have more than enough time to open up all the lockers and get a ton of resources. So Ember gets a big fat yes from me, because for an offensive frame, she is incredibly versatile, and it's just so much fun to play with her. It's just an amazing Warframe, so go and get Ember, you will not regret having this Warframe. And that's pretty much it for the video, so I thank you very much for watching, as always, and I will see you next time. Bye bye!